We'll just wait for Gino to get here and we'll get started. We've got probably 30 seconds left.
Okay. Looks like the TV's working.
It is, and we've got even good sound. It's like
Yeah, the sound too. Good. You're back in business.
right.
Prefer that. You can give me that back then. If I lose that, someone will be angry at me.
I was gonna say, like, another.
Yep.
It's a thing, it's a secret handshake. All right, we are at 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order. I don't think there's any changes to the agenda for today, and we've got the June 14 meeting minutes. I'd like to call a couple of corrections in the board members present list. We have Elliot Simon. But he's also in the absent list. He actually was absent, so we'll need to strike that.
Yep.
And that the date at the bottom is still the May 10th date.
Yep. In the footer. Yep.
In the footer. So thank you, Dr. Reedy, for your help on that. So with those changes, is there a motion to accept the minutes? Oh, here's Elliot.
Good morning, Elliot.
Good morning.
What we started early.
No, we started right on time.
Motion to approve the June meetings with the corrections noted.
All right. All
What were the correct? What were the correct?
you weren't present, so we're taking you off the present list, and the dates were at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
We were listed both present and not present.
Pretty amazing.
Elliot's in the quantum.
How can you be at two places at once when you're nowhere at all?
So we've got a motion to accept the meeting minutes as corrected. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
This is Ann Gwen. I wasn't there, so I will abstain from voting.
And are you going to abstain as well from the meeting minutes since you weren't here?
Sure.
All right. So the motion passes
Yeah.
with 2 abstentions. Anybody signed up for public comment? No. Okay. All righty. So we're gonna move on to unfinished business. The appeals process for septic permits. Dr. Reedy, did you want to take that? For me to do it? Nathan's on there. There's Nathan.
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I'm coming to you remotely, but I have drafted a very bare bones appeal process document that I believe either Gino or Dr. Reedy has printed out for you. We've gone around and around with this particular issue with the folks in Charleston, with one group referring us to somebody else and some other group referring us back. Essentially, they've pretty much directed us to the process in the Code of State Rules is pretty much that. It was a little unclear in the Code of State Rules as to exactly how that applied to the local Board of Health. The Administrative Procedures Act and the Code of State Rules sometimes are a little unclear as to what agencies that they apply to. The county does not have agencies that the Administrative Procedure Act applies to. It applies to state agencies. And bottom line is, we just wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing because, we had enacted our own appeal process, and And we just wanted to be sure that it conformed with the state law or rules. Anyway, so it took us a little bit going back and forth with those folks down in Charleston, like I said. But anyway, we finally got an approval from the attorney in the state Bureau of Health. And the document that you're looking at contains the 4 procedural steps. I think that we can pretty up that document a little bit and make it a little fancier and add a preamble or something like that. But generally, that's those 4 steps are the key part as far as the appeal goes. So if you will notice, when a sanitarian denies a septic system appeal, then they, the aggrieved party, if they choose, can go directly to the commissioner of the Board of Health. And then when, and then the commissioner will cause a hearing to be held. If they don't get satisfaction there, they can appeal it to a board of review. And then if they don't get satisfaction there, they can appeal it to the Intermediate Court of Appeals. So anyway, that's where we are. That's the process that the folks down in Charleston approved. And what I would suggest, I believe that it is adequately on the agenda. So if you all would like to move to approve this process, obviously that will negate the other process that we have had in place. And then I would suggest that we would take it to the county commission and get them to approve it. Just
Questions, Nathan?
sure.
Who is the current commissioner?
Current commissioner is Dr. Christensen. So the DHHR split into 3 entities as of the 1st of this year, and public health falls under what's called the Department of Health. And so that's a secretary. So the Department of Health is
Appointed by the governor?
cabinet, yeah, appointed by the governor. And then the Bureau for Public Health is under that, and Dr. Christensen, who's the director of that, is also referred to as the Commissioner of Health, Public Health. So that's who the code says that person's responsible for essentially enforcing the public health laws.
Okay. And that also prompts a question for me. Who's our current commissioner liaison for the county?
It's Dr. Cook.
Indeed.
No, from the county commission.
Cook,
Dr. Cook.
So
Dr. Cook.
Cook, and he just couldn't be here today.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he emailed us and said he wouldn't be able to make it, but he did make it the last time. So, yeah, he was here. He sat right there in that corner.
Oh, was he? Oh, sorry.
He just didn't want to be on camera, he said.
Gosh.
Is
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't want to be on
I was
camera.
wondering.
So he sat in the
Okay,
corner.
got it.
That explains it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really, he barely said a word, remember?
No,
He
okay.
was just learning, I guess.
What's the
He's gonna have to
notification?
be on camera.
He will be.
What's the notification process for this? So do we have to put it out for 30 days, or is it just we pass it and then goes to county commission?
I think Nathan might be best to answer that.
This is a little bit of a different animal, simply because I think this is the law, so there's not really anything that we can do to change this. If we wanted to be completely I guess safe, we could put it out for 30 days, but it doesn't really matter as far as we can't change this, so
Right.
there's not really anything that we can do about this, you know?
So I have a question. So we have a current rule or policy. And then that was enacted before the county commission had to approve them. We need to withdraw that.
Yes.
Since our position is we are simply following the state code as the Attorney General's office and the Bureau for Public Health attorney have advised, these are the steps. Do we really need to make a policy on that? Or simply we just follow.
We're
the
just
steps they
following the
give us.
state law here, so I mean, the
So-
thing is, we're not in compliance with state law right now. So it's,
But we are changing our practice in order to better comply with state law, right? I mean,
Right.
there's a perception that if someone gets their septic permit denied and they want to appeal it, that there is an avenue at the county level.
Mhm.
And there will essentially no longer be an avenue. So I think at least there's a perception that we are changing things to better comply with state.
but we're
So-
out
so-
of compliance
So
right
we're
now.
withdrawing a local rule.
Yeah,
And we don't have our local rule. It's the state rule. If the state rule changes, we continue to follow that.
So are you suggesting we have two motions, one to withdraw current rule and accept this, or what are you asking for?
I think Dr. Reedy's question is, do we need this policy at all since it seems to be,
Already in code.
really following the state law? I mean, that's a good question, Dr. Reedy. I suppose that we could have this document not as a policy, but just as a reference point for someone who wants to appeal, or in the alternative, you could just obtain the information about the commissioner and have that particular information available for someone who wants to appeal, and you could just give that to them. So
But if the current thing is actually in our rules and somebody goes and looks it up, we need to probably get rid of that.
we definitely need to withdraw that.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that's a good point, Dr. Reedy. It is possible we could just withdraw that and not do anything else. And
So we follow state code.
Yeah.
Here's the
And then-
guidance.
Right.
There'll be a
Then this is
handout.
what you can give to somebody.
Yeah.
or buy.
from there on out, we just say, here's the commissioner's information. You can appeal it to them. You know what I mean? And then
That makes sense. I make that motion.
then the process goes from there on, you know, as they do it.
So you
Okay,
make
well,
a
that
motion to-
sounds good to
Just
me.
withdraw the local rule.
Okay. Is there a second?
So when we withdraw the
There's actually-
local rule,
And there's a second, there's a motion on the floor.
okay,
Is there a second?
I second that.
second.
Any discussion?
So when we withdraw that, that has to still be recorded again in the clerk's office, doesn't it?
I would do
have it
so, and
removed.
And I would probably also take it to the county commission and just explain that to them, just so we're clearly within the bounds of the statute, you know, that now exists about our rules and rulemaking. And we can just explain to them that this is the policy that was recommended to us by the State Bureau
So-
of Public Health.
Just to clarify, Nathan, so there's nothing in state code that allows the county some local autonomy with regard to matters like this. It's absolutely controlled by the state and the code, and the code doesn't allow.
I
our
think
county
that
board-
would be a fair statement. This is their process, and I think that is also a better process, because instead of appealing the decision to the group that denied your permit, okay, you're going to a different group. And so I think it's a better process all around. I really do.
Any further discussion? All those in favor to withdraw the current rule, that's right, that's a motion to withdraw the current rule,
Local,
current local rule. All those in favor all those in favor of withdrawing the current local rule, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And
Okay,
when-
Ann's yes, okay. All right, the motion passes.
And that may be all that we need to do. Simply because the law is what the law is. I can work with Gino and Dr. Reedy to draft a document of some sort that provides an aggrieved party the information about where to go to follow the appeal.
Great.
And from
Thanks,
there
Dave.
on, they're in the hands of the state.
Does this need to go to public comment first, or is it?
No, because we're complying with
Yeah.
the law.
I would say, yeah, I'm not the lawyer, but I don't think you need to put that out for public comment when what we're doing is aligning ourselves with current
With law.
state law and
Yeah.
state code. So.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do to change this. So
Right.
Right.
In essence.
It's not-
Legislature.
Right.
So normally, the public comment is valuable because we can get people's input and we can say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do it this way. Maybe we should do it the way someone suggested or whatever. But in this particular case, we can't change it.
Right, that was the purpose of my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, that makes sense, Elliot. Absolutely.
Alrighty. Thank you guys for that. Thank you, Nathan. I know this has been a bit of a chore trying to get the guidance.
It was just strange because they kept pointing us to someone else and someone else and someone else, but we finally got it done, and thanks mostly to Dr. Reedy's and I suppose Gino as well, but especially Dr. Reedy's
Tenacity.
persistence. Yes.
It's all Dr.
So
Reed.
stubborn.
Give me any credit. Yes, he's more stubborn than they are.
Says a lot, actually.
It does.
Sorry, Dr.
So
Reedy, I
you're
can
saying, talk about the Commissioner of Health, so one of his duties is he can remove me from office for non-compliance when I'm acting as his agent. So, the other is if he decides that the Board of Health is not in compliance, the board can be dissolved, so,
Good to be compliant.
so we act as his representatives in some areas we don't, so it's a little
It's
confusing.
good to be the king. So
Yeah.
where is Clay Marsh in all this?
No, he works for WVU, he's not a government, well,
Well,
I don't know what he does with the government officially, he's the
he
COVID
was,
czar, I guess.
oh, okay, so he was just in a special advisory position for the governor, is that what he was? Because I
I
thought he was
believe,
acting as if he were the.
I believe that was a,
Okay.
the role.
Or an acting role.
Okay, so we have a second item under unfinished business, the proposed rule for fencing around septic.
So that was something we discussed and
Right.
we went around about, and we digested exactly what you guys
Mhm.
said to us, and
Right.
we understand. I do think we should introduce the new sanitarian supervisor, give her an opportunity to introduce herself, and then give her opinion on this, because she does have an opinion.
Okay, well, let's wait for Brandon to get back, so why don't we skip that?
You can take,
Go over to Charlie and then we can come back to that.
Sure.
How about that? Okay.
All right, commissioners, I am involved in a couple of other things here, so I'm going to duck out because I don't think that there's anything else in the agenda that requires me to be here.
I
Is
think we're
that-
good, Nathan. Thank you. You've done more than your fair share of hours for us.
Oh,
the past
that's
couple
okay.
weeks.
No. Okay, well, thank you very much.
It's Gillian.
Oh.
Oh, okay, that's good.
All right, so Charlie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, so we're gonna start with the May financials. We're gonna start with the bank balance of $360,000. We are not in compliance with reserve requirements by almost 12,000. We're gonna see that turn around in June. Looking at financial summary, May alone, revenue $58,500. We're gonna reduce that by salaries and wages of $162,000. And then operating expenses of $2,500, leaving us a deficit for the month of May alone of $106,000. fiscal year to date. So we're 92% through the year. Revenue, almost 1.5 million. We're gonna reduce that by salaries and wages of 1.17 million. And operating expenses of $349,000. Leaving us a deficit through May 31st of 2024 of $42,000. Comparing, yes,
So, we've been out of compliance. Is that you know, since I've been with this organization just a couple of years. Is there seasonality to us being in and out of compliance?
yeah, so usually during the winter months, we're out of compliance.
Where's July?
It
Yes,
seems very low.
Yeah, it is. So one of the main reasons why we've remained out of compliance is the fact that West Virginia has been slow to pay.
But that changed in June.
It does change. We'll go down through here. The receivables from the state of West Virginia right now, or in May, 318,000. We're gonna see that drastically decrease in June.
I mean, not to skip ahead, but our
Yeah.
deficit is still high in June.
Yes.
It's actually almost triple.
Because we still need to bill out items for
Okay.
June.
Right.
And I'll cover
So
that.
stay in order, Karen. Okay, got it.
I do think it's worth kind of digging in a little bit on the reserve requirement, because being one of the newest member on the board, you know, like this year, I think last year, I don't remember us being out of reserve requirements for
Couple
more than
months.
You're correct.
Well, we
more
had
than 2
the,
or 3 months at a time, and I think we were.
well, we had the 1 month with the one-time expenditures with the upgrades and everything like that. So that carried over for a while for us. So it was a pretty significant spend. So we were out as we were clearing that out of our books. And then we were back in compliance
Mhm.
and now we're back out.
Yeah,
But
but
now we're
also,
back
it's
in
probably
June,
4 or
so-
5,
4 months.
4 months, and I guess I'm just thinking is like,
3 months of
December, January,
expenses.
February.
yeah,
So
so it kind of trailed.
Yeah, it trailed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm just, at what point does the board, you know, intervene? And I don't think there's any guidance at the state level for that, or just. if
no,
it
we
com-
created this
The
rule.
the 3
actually.
month, oh, this isn't, I thought this was a state law.
Kind of.
I think it is.
It is a law, we're stricter than the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah,
Okay,
we created
We
this.
put a buffer in there of an extra additional amount above and beyond. Am I wrong? I'm correct, right?
So it used to be that.
Okay.
We used to have a buffer, but then we went to state.
We went to straight to state code. So this is compliant with state code,
yeah,
the way we have it set up.
Like when
now.
I started, we didn't have this.
Yeah, when when I started here, we didn't even
Mm-mm.
worry about reserve amounts.
Mhm.
So this
Yeah.
is fairly recent. Lucky you're gonna be a part of it.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to, I'm not looking for anything in particular, just, you know, like if we were 4, 5, 6 months, and let's say that the county commission says, hey, well, what is being done about that?
Mhm.
Like, what responsibility does the board have to help, you know, engage on getting us back there? Or do we just continue to, oh, then that's 6 months, and what do we do as the board? Do we have any responsibility in that whatsoever? You know, and I think at 4 months, and then we're back in, and then we're out, and then we're back in. Like, but what if we're 6 months out? Do we just continue to sign off on the financials, and I don't know.
But we're back in June.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's the thing. So it's been up and down. I'm more concerned about the deficits than I am about.
The budget deficit?
Yeah, the budget deficit than
Mhm.
the reserve amount, because again, with so much of it coming from West Virginia, so it's just basically what's our cash on hand.
Mhm.
I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about us running deficits, and that's actually what we dug ourselves out of. So the fact that we continue to have that, that's actually more of a concern to me,
Well, we've only
to be
had,
honest.
this would be the first year in 4 years that there's a deficit.
No, I know, but the fact that it's 42 and then looking at the
Right.
preliminary,
Right.
it's almost triple that, like that's a problem
No, I know.
too. So,
Well,
well,
we haven't built, but we'll discuss that when we
Yeah.
discuss. June.
So,
Okay.
go ahead, thanks.
Sorry, Charlie.
yeah, I'm less worried about cash because we
Mhm.
know there's cash coming in.
Right, it really is just a payment timing issue from West
Correct.
Virginia that's causing that.
Now, if it was $5 in reserve, okay, yeah, that's a problem. But when we're like 372 versus, or yeah, 370, what are we at? 360,
360.
360,
Mhm.
right? That's fine. But if it was $100, then I'm going back to my ramen days in
So
college.
some of the money we've already billed to the state
Mhm.
that we're waiting for, that shows up in accounts receivable. But for some grants, we can only bill quarterly, but we can't bill until the quarter is over and we have accounted for all those expenses for those 3 quarters, for the quarter.
Mhm.
For example, all of our staff for the QRT, which is about 2.5 salaries, all of their salaries we accumulate for 3 months before,
We can bill it out.
and we can't do that until the time is over. And then we bill it. So there's a lag. It won't even show up in accounts receivable till we build it. We've already incurred the expense.
Mhm.
And as long as that's a consistent lag and we know it's coming, and that's really a forecasting, but it's scary, I agree.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, yeah, I'm often scared.
Yeah.
That's the job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get the budget deficit too. I just, and maybe we'll cross that bridge if we're ever back to that 4 or 5 or 6 months under reserve requirements. It's like, I don't know. I think we're good. If June we're back out, I don't want to make a thing where there is no thing, but it just doesn't seem like there's a mechanism for anything to happen if there's continual.
Sure there is.
There is.
We can cut the budget.
You can
Yeah.
cut the
We
budget.
can
Uh-huh.
stop spending.
You can cut programs.
So that's when you
Yeah.
engage from an
You
operational.
would look at me, you would say, what can we cut?
Yeah, what are you doing to get us
What
back
can-
there?
Yeah.
It was just
and-
more of an
and I think-
engaged discussion on how do we get back there? What
Absolutely.
are the reasons behind
Ul-
it?
Ultimately, the Board of
Yeah.
Health makes the policies and decides what programs outside of what is absolutely required by the state,
Mhm.
what programs can be run. So you
Okay.
can say, we're gonna cut it back to bare bones and be only what the state demands and nothing else. You can do that, and that would definitely reduce costs.
Mhm.
It would definitely reduce services too, but.
Right,
it would
right, and
reduce
that's the
costs.
balance.
And that's the balance, exactly. So what we're talking about here is, a lot of it is grant billing, and a lot of it's inconsistent in the way you spend it up ahead and then you spend it down. So I've learned some tricks over the last year or two, vis-a-vis grants, and instead of waiting till the end of the month, end of the quarter for certain grants that I know I will spend all of the money, that we know we will spend all the money, I'm billing those now
Mhm.
upfront at the beginning of the quarter. To smooth out the
Okay.
accounts receivable, but also to smooth out the revenue flow and try to get it a little flatter as opposed to high peaks and then deficit, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate the discussion. I mean, Elliot's comment just kind of like,
yep.
it's always been kind of just like, well, what then? So this is helpful. So thank
Some
you.
grants pay up front, and others pay later, and that later can be, who knows? And some of the
6 months on one
upfront
of them.
grants don't get approved till months into the fiscal year, even though they could send us the money July 1st, in theory,
Mhm.
which would be great for our, our bank balance.
It's the age-old issue of cash flow.
Cash flow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Charlie.
So to go over, where we stand compared to the budget. Revenue, we're 7% above budget. Again, we're 92% of the way, 72% through the year. 92, did I say that? 92% through the year.
Yep.
Revenue, is 7% above at 99%. Salaries and wages were 13% above budget. I would like to note in May, there were 3 payrolls. Operating expenses were 21% above budget. And no surprises there, renovations, vaccines. Those are the 2 high dollar values. Accounts receivable, $448,000, $318,500 is related to the state of West Virginia. That's 71% of our AR balance.
So like if that all came in tomorrow, we would basically double what's in our.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That definitely provides some better perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah. Maybe we need to start mapping it, like if this
Yeah.
goes there. then-
I did a couple of years ago when I did the budget, I did a monthly revenue flow and expenses flow. And remember when I showed you where the peaks and valleys were and
Yeah.
all of that? What I'm trying to do is smooth those out.
Mhm.
We're still going to have that big peak in late spring because that's where the permit billing is for the next fiscal year. So we'll always have that spike, but can we control the spikes that the grants cause and try to smooth those out? That's really what I'm trying to do.
To compare to last year, May 23 to May 24, we're, fairly comparable. We're at a deficit of $42,000 right now. May 24, May 23, we're at a deficit of 46,000.
All that fun end of the year money that comes in and makes things look better, but makes you sweat in May.
Right, well, sorry, do you have more for?
No,
Go
I'm
to
done
June.
with my
Go to
summary.
June.
So let's go,
Yeah.
let's hop to
Yeah.
June,
June, yep.
especially since we're coming, this is the end of the closing. We will, but I think it's good to, because we're coming to the fiscal year end, let's look at it in totality.
And this is a preliminary June. Bank balance, 486,000. In compliance with reserve requirements by $82,000. For the month of June alone, revenue almost 54,000. I do expect that to increase when you get the final June reports. Salaries and we're gonna reduce by salaries and wages of almost $94,000 and operating expenses of $28,000, leaves a deficit for the month of June of $68,000. Then fiscal year to date, revenue 1.5 million. We're reduced by salaries and wages of 1.26 million and operating expenses of 377,000. Like I said, deficit through June 30th, 2024 of $110,000.
So that would be the deficit for the year.
For the fiscal year preliminary, so there are items that still need to be filled out.
I see.
Because we had to wait for the quarter end and now we're working on getting the invoices together. So those will be dated 6/30 because that's when the services were performed.
So how much of how much do you think this number is going to change?
So based on discussions, it sounds like it will change around 80,000. What we're hoping is a break even year at this point. So it might be a little over, a little under.
That would be ideal.
Well, that's the classic conundrum in this position as opposed to like a county position where they pay you all your money up front, you spend that down. Is that we have to deal with a revenue, a cyclical system here.
Right.
And so one of the big things is to try to provide the amount of service to the county as much as possible for the amount of revenue that we're taking in. So a zero balance would be ideal. And set up an $80,000 revenue surplus, which was very nice for a while, and it put some money in the bank that we could play with. But a zero balance means that you are providing the amount of services that are equal to the amount of revenue that you're taking in. And really that's my responsibility to the taxpayer is to make sure we provide the services that the revenue is being spent on instead of banking it and putting it in.
Correct.
As a nonprofit,
That's exactly right. That's my role is to make sure we are right around zero balance on an annual basis. So.
But one of the things I will say I'm a little concerned about is that I think we had an anticipated surplus for the year.
We did.
So
We did
I
out
think
of.
this is where it comes,
Yeah,
excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I think that's where it comes into play as we start looking to the new fiscal year. Is saying, okay, how are we bouncing up against that? Because again, you had some one-time expenditures and all that kind of stuff, but again, our budget was supposed to be a surplus. If we come out to net zero, great. But then what did we do for this current now the fiscal year that we're in? And do we need to make adjustments? Because this is to me cutting it a little.
I understand. Yeah, of course, I'm nervous on a regular basis.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. Reedy and I discussed this. I discussed this about a month ago with him, and I said, this is probably where we're going to end up for the fiscal year, somewhere at a zero balance. And I said, we had anticipated about a $60,000 to $70,000 surplus. And he had to remind me that we did start a new program. We did have some personnel changes that necessitated an increase in personnel expenses. And so he had to remind me of those things. So those are the two big ones. The two big ones are the one-off and then the personnel changes. So adding staff for the QRT team and things like that, which I can give you an update on that too. That's really where it is. That's really the difference between having that 70,000 surplus and having a zero
But the
balance.
QRT though, we got a grant for that, didn't
We
we?
did get a grant for
So like,
that.
that's where I'm not understanding how does it drive up cost if we don't have the revenue coming in that's supposed to
So
be for it?
well, first of all, because we incurred 4 quarters worth of expenses and
Uh-huh.
they don't bill out. Only 3 quarters bill out in this fiscal year.
Okay,
The 4th quarter of that grant doesn't bill out until October. So that's one of the few grants that overlaps fiscal years. So that's you're incurring the costs, but you're not being able to bill the costs all in the same fiscal year, unfortunately, on that particular grant. So I still have to bill out the 3rd quarter for June. And I will, but
okay, so it's
I
like one
think
of the,
that's all part of the revenue that will be coming in June, yeah. So
So to me, operationally, the two things are we've got to make more money, which comes down to, we can't really make a lot on environmental. It's inspection fees. We can't say, let's inspect you 12 times, well, it's actually part of their license, but so it's the clinical side. So we have to increase our clinical services and increase those that get paid for, not just giving away services, which has happened in the past. But also not incurring new expenses such as renovations or stuff. And if there is a need for that, going to the board and saying, we request this non-budgeted item, it will incur this much deficit. This is, so we got to make more and, watch our budget, just like at home.
that is, and there was a noticeable increase in certain things personnel wise, so, when we discussed the budget back in May, I may have to remind you that we did actually lay off a position moving forward. So hopefully we won't have to do that again, but that is always in the back of my mind that we may have to lay off another position. And so that's something we will discuss when it's absolutely necessary, but I'm not afraid to do that.
anything else on June preliminaries?
Do you want me to go through how it compares to the budget and receivables?
Sure.
All right. Revenue 3% above budget. Salaries and wages were about 13% above what was budgeted, and operating expenses 30% above budget. And the 30% sounds really high. It is $25,000. To maybe put that in a little bit better perspective. Accounts receivable down to 274,000. It was 448. Yep, 448. And the state receivable is down to 172,000 compared to 318,000 in the prior month. That is, however, still 63% of our receivable balance. If I'm going to compare it to last year, right now we're at a deficit of 110,000. We had a surplus last year about 76,000. I would like to state that in that was about $30,000 of additional funds from the state of West Virginia that we do not anticipate to get this year, that 5th allocation.
Yep, not anticipating that.
Any additional questions?
The receivables over 90, that are under 10%, which I would guess would be the non-West Virginia treasuries, are up to about 60,000. And it looks like it was about $10,000 less in May. I don't have April with me. I mean, I think I mentioned it a little bit last month as well, that's the medical services billing.
Yep.
The contract, the commercial payers and things like that.
Yeah.
And you've got good mechanisms, but you got a good team in there. That's always a challenge. I mean, not in healthcare, I should say that out loud, but some of those
Some of them
payers,
can be difficult.
some of them can be extremely
Insurance,
difficult.
difficult, I don't know.
Health insurance, difficult.
Some of them are It's, yeah, it's very, very challenging. So I think it's just something as you increase your clinical services, just continue to think about, having the capacity to chase that down and maybe even partnering at some point with somebody, hey, I've done 180 days worth of collection efforts, and then finding someone that can help secure that.
Like a collection
Like a
service.
collect.
We have,
Yeah.
we have a contract with them, and we utilize them when we feel, when it's necessary.
Perfect.
And we utilize them to do all that back COVID vaccine billing, and that put a lot of money back in the bank.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
if we have to, we'll do it again.
Yeah, that's all I had. Just wanted to note that.
Yeah, thank you.
No other questions on the June preliminaries. Is there a motion to accept the May financials?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the May financials, say aye. Aye. Saw Ann Smith and Ann Wynn. Okay, so it passes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Charlie and Amber. Thank you. We'll see you next month. Well, probably in like 2 weeks.
All right, do you want to hop back over to Alexis?
Sure, it's your call. You're the
Let's
boss.
go ahead. Brandon, we just postponed the second item on unfinished business. To take the opportunity to meet our new head sanitarian, but then also to revisit the conversation from last month on the fencing.
yes,
Recommendation.
welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am Alexis Davy. I'm coming to you guys from Monongalia County Health Department. I was a sanitarian there for 4 years, and I got my bachelor's of science and public health at West Virginia University, which is what brings me here today. The new sanitarian supervisor. On this specific discussion, I have had the opportunity to hear back from Rick Hirches, who is our sewage program director. And he stated that there's currently no existing legislation that mirrors what we're trying to do here, though he would certainly support that if we feel that's something that is necessary. But coming into this, my current opinion on this matter is that because there's no existing legislation, I kind of want to do a little bit more research and dig into this a little bit more, as well as consider the comments that you guys had brought up for consideration in the last meeting, specifically regarding enforcement action and how we would go about writing the legislation of enforcement. Yes.
Who's the individual that you just referred to?
Rick Hirches, he is the West Virginia sewage program director.
Okay.
Mhm. And he certainly said that he would help us in writing this legislation if necessary. Though my current opinion is that we may be able to address this issue through public health educational awareness methods. And that's something that I can certainly work on as I transition more into my role. Maybe getting some focus groups together of septic installers and some community members and talking about the things that they've already gone through in terms of their septic reserve areas being destroyed and how we can kind of prevent that without necessarily going through a legislative means. If we can go, prevent that without going through legislative means. But certainly legislation is not completely off the table because I'm going to continue to monitor the numbers of incidents that we have for the rest of the year. That way we can kind of get an idea of where the trend is heading.
What exactly is the issue we're trying to address here?
Yeah, so the issue is that when people apply for their septics, they actually have a reserve system. So we come out and we evaluate their soil. That needs to be undisturbed soil so that it'll properly filter and properly function as a septic system.
Disturb meaning.
Meaning that
Can't go bulldoze it.
correct, yeah.
After they've
Oh, I see.
set up
Yeah.
the reserve, they can't come bulldoze or drive over it, put dirt on top of it,
Yeah.
change it.
Yeah, so the scenarios that we are currently seeing is that there are, when people are constructing their own homes, obviously that's gonna require the bulldozing equipment to sort of, get the construction process, obviously, and it is ruining that section of land that they have set aside for their septic system. So when people are building their homes without putting that system in first, it is creating, risk for their septic system. So we're trying to address that. Legislation is certainly one way that we can address that. There's gonna be difficulties with that we can continue to discuss, if
The
necessary.
general conversation was that we don't there's like sort of an incidence out of the 225 permits we do a year, there's maybe been 2 in this situation. And so I think there was generally the conversation was not really super favorable of putting more regulations.
So the
Yeah.
builder disturbed the,
It's not really the builder. It's not been builders. It's
Yeah,
been more
yeah.
individuals who are general contracting their own homes. So it's not Dan Ryan. It's
but I mean, even
Dan
if you're
Jones.
building your own home, you're still the builder, so.
correct.
What they're doing is they were unaware of.
Correct,
These-
yes.
Well, no, it's in the educational components,
Yes.
like if they don't do this
Exactly.
But they're not-
They were unaware or.
or
they-
didn't pay attention.
The
Right.
core of this issue really comes down to education about people's septic systems. So if we can address that in getting the public to understand how important their reserve area is and why the state requires that it not be disturbed, which can then lead to this denial, right? If we can kind of address that through methods of education and focus groups and, utilizing our social media to put the word out there about how to care for your septic system and how to, protect that reserve area when you're building a home, I think that would certainly be really valuable and a valuable use of our time.
Versus mandating certain fencing and
Right.
all of the other stuff,
And that's-
all of them on every
Extremely-
septic install in the
Right.
county.
So, but there are standards that, so there are metrics
Mhm.
that apply to
Yes.
this situation.
Yes.
So, so getting that awareness out
Right.
would be.
So do this
Good,
first
right.
before
Yes.
mandating
Right.
everybody who builds a home has to put X amount of fencing at X sizing with X type of tape around it and.
Right. Because we're talking about the septic field, right?
Correct,
That-
yes, yeah.
Did they mention any other counties that have done anything like that with the
She said,
general?
Currently, there's no precedent for
No.
this legislation.
Okay,
Mm.
and is this legislation? Like, I didn't think it was.
it's actually regulated.
Maybe,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I
Yeah,
apologize.
New
Regulations.
rules, new
All right.
regulations.
Yeah, that's county level,
Yeah.
local,
Correct.
and so
It would be
there's
our
no
rule.
county level, local
Correct,
regulation. Okay,
yes.
that's what I.
Well,
This would be a local.
Yeah, it depends upon the powers that were endowed in that organization to promulgate new rules without legislation. So I mean, that's a gray area and that winds up in court, So.
Yeah, and we certainly have the authority to do that, and we have the support if necessary from our state to impose that rule. But I think that the state would also agree that, going about it through an educational perspective before we reach that point, as well as monitoring if there is an increase in these incidents down the road, maybe we could impose that rule later on. So I just kind of want to keep it in the back of our minds for right now as we kind of see where this trend goes.
Cause the incidence is sort of like, why would you put my perspective, I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, but. Putting a regulation in for 225 people for 2 people that can't.
Right,
Comply, that's
Right.
not, right?
Right, but
If
so.
it was happening with like major builders, okay, is there a problem that we have to solve for, but right now
Well,
it's.
so then part of the process then is if somebody's denied, right,
Mhm.
because of a violation of whatever. Isn't there like a process where they can remediate and mitigate so that then. Or have they permanently ruined their ability to get a septic? I mean, it's
Yeah, so.
what's the remedy?
So once that lot has been denied, you cannot be issued a permit on that lot after that.
That's a
point.
problem.
Yeah.
There has to be a way somebody can correct the problem so
Mhm.
that they're in compliance. So
Right.
How do we do that?
Yes, as of right now, and that's actually the state
Yeah.
that imposes that rule. So if the lot is denied, which is why we're seeing people go through this appeal process, and then it becomes very public and very.
Or you have to do a
burdensome.
different class system, right?
Sometimes that is an option that requires a separate evaluation of the soils and it requires some specific circumstances. So, if you're going through like an HAU or an alternative system like that, you need to have access on your property to a roadside ditch or some type of drainage so that the water can go into the water system.
Because this is not a criminal matter, as long as.
No.
In civil manners, there has to be a redress, there has to be a way that people can make it right.
Yeah, so right now, and I do think that this is very well intentioned to protect those that are having their systems destroyed and then are out their home. And I think that's kind of where she was coming from with presenting this to you guys. But it kind of opens up for discussion, what are good ideas on how to tackle this and what are better ways that maybe we can do it on our end. That don't just necessarily go through the ruling process. But yeah, it's certainly an issue that is impacting people's homes and they're out their homes. Yeah.
And so prevention is best,
Yeah.
but do you have any ideas on how somebody, I mean, does
She said
anybody?
she wanted to look into it a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Come back, she's just day
Okay.
3
Yeah.
on the job, so.
Yeah. So it's something I
Welcome
would
aboard.
need. Thank you.
Throwing you a line, Alexis.
Welcome.
So,
Though this is not frequent, when it does happen, and often it's a situation that a lot changed hands. It was previously approved, but that approval is good for a year because things change. And then there's real clear language. You can't be altering that.
Right.
But that gets lost in it's not that many pages on the permit, but it doesn't get seen. Many times the installer is the one that goes through this, but the homeowner is the one that signs it and is responsible. So people suddenly feel like they're being screwed when they actually altered the land. But to kind of redo the soil and put new soil, that starts becoming experimental stuff that's not standard, and that needs to be really done by the state. The other issue, those are the prominent and give us a lot of issues, the whole appeal process when it's denied. But the other issue is that people who have septic systems don't know how to take care of them, and they may decide to put a garage or a parking lot or a basketball court or something over it because they don't see that reserve area. It's underground. They don't know where it is. And then that could lead to failed septics years later. So many people who move here have they've never had a septic system or they grew up with one, but they were kids. They didn't know what it was. So the education's a part beyond just the initial construction.
thank you, Alexis.
Yeah, that was great.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Next item, so traditionally, when we haven't had our new appointee since Anwin is gonna be exiting the board, thank you very much for your years of service, Ann. I think in the past, when we've had a position still open for our July appointment of officers, we've deferred it to August. So opening that up for discussion, if we'd like to continue on with that practice, if you guys want to do it today, it doesn't matter to me, but traditionally, we waited for the new position.
I like tradition.
Okay. Can I quote you on that?
Well, me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's still, if it hasn't been resolved by August, I think we go ahead and move.
Sure.
But I think waiting a month and letting that work its process, I think makes sense.
The county commission has their own issues they're working through.
All right, so we'll skip that and move it to August. All right, moving on to the agency activity reports. Threat preparedness, the other Brandon.
So, on the
His
threat
name's
preparedness side,
Brandon.
Everything's brand and.
yeah, right. Brandon.
He's the
Hi,
new,
Brandon.
Yeah, I'm-
Replace Mason.
he's the new Mason.
Yeah, I'm
Mason's
new
now a
Mason,
new
yeah.
sanitarian.
The last one, yeah.
You've missed a lot.
Yeah, I've been having.
With one meeting, and I tried to get on, I was.
No, Brandon's been on board for a
I've been
couple,
away for a couple months out.
Yeah,
out of the-
but he's
Okay.
been in
I've
training
been
and
in
stuff.
since March, yeah.
Right, well, hello.
See.
Welcome aboard.
So on threat preparedness side, there's a few things, Dr. Reedy and I, along with the county emergency management department and sheriff's department, along with some other figureheads in the county, attended the 2024 Jefferson County exercise and tabletop. It was based on a flooding event, some that kind of a lot of rain, big deluge of rain, kind of affected some of the electrical parts of the county, and there was also a chemical spill aspect included.
This actually happened or this?
No,
was
no, no,
the-
this.
Oh,
this
I'm
is
like,
the
wait,
train.
what?
This is the train.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But no, this was, and basically it was, you know, a very educational thing. We had some good parts to it. There's some parts that we learned some pretty valuable ideas from. And besides that, it went pretty well. On the other aspect, the health department will be conducting a active shooter exercise and training on August 9th. It's mainly just for the health department. We're just gonna be testing, well, I particularly be testing all the sheriff's department. We're testing a lot of these staff members, what their response to it will be, the emergency response.
That's on when our next meeting is. So you won't be here next. Our next meeting is August 9th, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, well,
Here.
yeah, I mean, we'll have to. figure it out.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Schedule it out.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, but so yeah, the health department would be mainly with us, and then, like I said, the sheriff's department will be with it. It's just testing staff members on how we'll be able to respond to that, the evacuation routes, basically, you know, and some training afterwards on how to, what to do and stuff like that, which for them and some of the new staff that are coming into the department. And basically, it's also to kind of train a little bit, especially before the vaccine period, for the back to school vaccine occurring and some of the fees changing. That was probably something necessary that we should probably do. And the last thing was that I'm also registering, getting travel plans ready for the IAM conference in November. And that's gonna be in Colorado this year.
Explain what I am.
The International Associated Emergency Manager. So basically, the Emergency Manager Conference, I think Mason went last year around that same time, in Long Beach, California. This year to Colorado, I'll be going to the same thing. Just currently, it's still pretty early, but just getting registered and travel plans prepared. And a lot of people are still already getting ready to go to it. So, besides that.
Need to pitch them to bring their business to West Virginia and host the conference in West Virginia.
Yeah, it would be good.
I'll try.
I know it's not cool for you because then you don't get to go somewhere, you know, different, but
How many attend that conference?
I'd say probably few thousand from all throughout the country. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's a pretty big conference. It's national. It's a nationally recognized conference, so it's fairly large. Yeah.
very cool.
How many hours was the tabletop that you did?
It was a whole day. Pretty much.
A whole day,
Pretty
8
much.
hours?
Yeah, I think it was like 9 a.m. started. We think we went to like 3:30, so it was pretty much the whole day. Yeah.
8 counties involved?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was. I have to remember now.
But-
I think it was about
So it was a
8,
regional exercise. Each county had slightly different scenario.
Mhm.
And you could put in things we wanted to work through, but we didn't actually know what the scenario was going to be. So things that affected health department were in there, and it was very good. You call it when you got the scenario, then if it involved someone who wasn't there, like it could be different managers in town, you called them and said, this is an exercise. Hypothetically, if this happens, what do you do? And so it and the law enforcement who were there, they were very engaged. You know, sometimes when people are there, it's like it's not real, but this was because they're dealing with this stuff every day and working through stuff. So it was one of the more valuable exercises.
Sounds like it. Thank you.
Environmental?
So environmental report, so I apologize, some of these numbers aren't currently up to date. I haven't had access to, you know, garner, you know, the most up-to-date numbers. But looking at this, the ones that, you can pay attention to, the food handler cards, well and septic information requests, which are pretty much on average, as well as the animal encounters, a little bit higher than normal, but that's normal for the summer months. There's more animal encounters during the summer. We do have 2 sanitarians that are attending the National Environmental Health Conference in Pittsburgh. They'll be there next week and they're
So the
really
health guys
excited
get
about that.
Pittsburgh and the preparedness guys get Colorado.
Yeah, it's nice in Colorado too.
Hey, they did say there's a pickle festival happening, so
Okay,
they're
well,
really excited about
yeah.
that, so.
And I love Pittsburgh for the record. I'm not
I'm
dissing
glad you
Pittsburgh.
clarified that.
My mother's Pittsburgh.
I love Pittsburgh.
That's it.
Yeah, but other than that, you know, they're handling the transition of me coming in pretty well. Work has remained mostly unaffected and they are still pretty motivated, and I've actually gotten to go out on a couple of site visits with staff already and sort of see how they interact in the field, and they're very competent and very well trained, so I'm excited to work with them.
Political, I mean, we've got the written part, but I guess.
I wish Lindsay was here to be able to discuss that with you, but Dr. Reedy is more than capable.
So we have not done as much in the women's health with our practitioner out. We have not stopped doing it, and we have someone who'll be helping us this month with it.
Do we know when Leah is gonna be able to return?
Hopefully within the next month.
Okay, good.
My understanding is she's doing well.
Yeah.
This could take time. Vaccinations are starting to increase as people are getting ready for school, so we have some extra days set aside for that. The quick response team continues to get more activity as we become aware of the services, and they continue to every week or two get someone into a treatment program. And so it's building. It's got a long ways to go. It looks like the opioid settlement money is on hold, partly because of Supreme Court ruling and partly because it's a slow process anyway. But so we're not expecting, unlike a few months ago, we're not expecting that suddenly we're going to have to make a proposal for some big program, which that gives us time to build and see what capacity we need. We have submitted the information, so I'll just move into the health officer report too. We have submitted for the as we talked about last year, the opioid treatment program to the Office of Licensure, Healthcare Facility Licensure, and that staff at the state level has all changed. So the new people, it sounds like we're going to be the first one they license in this, but they have to review. We have to send them our policies on different things, which is a wide range of things, some of which are policies internal policies we never had written. And once they review it, then they'll give us the go ahead, and then we have to see patients for I think 30 to 60 days, and then they will come to a site visit and review the records, and then give us licensure for it. So
The policies, are they just internal stuff, or is that stuff that the
It's
board's gonna have to take?
it's internal, so the board could review them. But they
No,
become-
do we, do, you-
no,
or
you
I'm
do
asking,
not
or
have
do we need
You
to?
do not have to.
Thank you.
So they will be general policies like how do staff or patients, deal with grievances, what are rights, and then technical policies for the substance use disorder about, your drug tests and referring for counseling, and what if they're pregnant, what if they need to be dismissed from the program, how do we address concurrent medical or psychiatric issues. So all these things need to be in writing, and the code has a lot of stuff in there, and we have to comply with all of it. So it's some other states don't have it. There's good things about having all this stuff in there as far as keeping our quality up.
Yeah.
There's bad things, and it's quite overwhelming.
Do we still have an epidemiologist or not?
We do not. Actually, in
When did she leave?
the end of last month. So most of the counties in the state do not have epidemiologists. A few of, I think maybe 3 do. And our volume of reportable diseases is small enough that it's hard to see that expense. In the past, and in most health departments, it's a combination of the sanitarians and the nurses doing that. So that's one of the things we're going to be working on, is splitting up. In some cases, will be done by sanitarians, some by nursing, some a combination. So that's the function is needed, but most times it's not actually an epidemiologist.
Good.
Yeah, that was the position that I laid off. Because
Okay.
looking at the budget, I was like, this is what contributes a lot of value to the organization, unfortunately, because of the volume that we do not receive the volume to justify that expense. And so that's the reason I laid that position off.
Bit of a luxury.
Yeah, it was a luxury, and it was nice to have, and I think it took a lot of weight off other staff members, but it's not weight that we can't.
Laid off with an expanded nursing position.
Right, yeah, right.
And then do billable services.
Correct. The nurses can actually perform billable services and generate revenue.
Yeah.
Have to think like that, unfortunately.
Are you, is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Well, I've said just about everything already in there that I have on my notes for this portion. So new environmental health manager, as you met, the county commission approved the environmental services rules and new fees, 5-0 on that.
Nice.
So that'll add about $54,000 to the estimated budget, to the revenue budget, and that's really helpful. So that started on yesterday. I put all the new fees into the system, so we'll be billing those out at the higher rates, and that should help a lot. So.
Great. Nice work.
And Dr. Cook has actually been quite the ally on the commission for us. So that's nice.
Yes.
All right.
That's it.
So our next meeting, August 9th. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
And still.
Have a good.
And Smith.
Good to see you, Elliot. Have a good one.
Have a good day.